Welcome, wandering souls and lost sailors, to the Ship of the Dead podcast.
Arya mateys, welcome aboard the Ship of the Dead podcast. Today with me, sailing the seas of the dead, Jordan Weisman, creator of Battletech, Shadowrun, Crimson Skies, and most importantly, Pirates of the Spanish Main. Am I right?
Absolutely. I should have said, yes.
And Zach Weisman, creator of Sea of Legends board game, which you all know I'm a fan of. They're on board today to talk about their new CRPG or computer RPG, Sea of Legends. Sea of Legends is a system-driven, narrative-rich, open-world computer role-playing game in which you will chart the course of your pirate character through their career from commanding a dinghy to a pirate fleet. Gentlemen, welcome aboard the Ship of the Dead.
It'd be a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, of course. It's great to meet and talk to you both. I'm a fan of both of your works. Before this project, when it got announced, I was very excited. I guess give us the elevator pitch. Let's start with what is Sea of Legends, the CRPG, and then maybe we'll zoom back in time and tell us about what Sea of Legends, the board game, is.
All right. Well, I'll take the computer one and have Zach do the tabletop. So the computer game is a open world game. It is, if the elevator pitch would be Sid Meier's Pirates meets Pirates of the Caribbean. It's a systems driven world where you can sail around, but the whole world, all the factions have their own agendas, like they do in the board game, where they're all off pursuing their own goals. There's kind of a active economic environment, so that, things have different prices on different islands based upon the different wars that are going on or pirate activity, including your own. And so that is kind of the foundation. And I think that's something Sid Meier's Pirates did a spectacular job of 40 years ago and then again 20 years ago. And we wanted to build on top of that with a lot more rich narrative because, we're story folks. We love the RPG part of it. And so there's, we're again, taking from a lot of the great characters and situations that were in the board game, bringing those in to be dynamic storytelling based upon your actions and the romances you pursue, the nemesis you create, the relationship with your crew and with the other pirate captains and the factions all work together to create a rich story environment. And then being turn-based kind of tactical guys, or at least I do that in all my games. So instead of like in Sid's Pirates, there was more of a
real time,
timing kind of base thing, for your sword fights and your
dancing,
sea battles.
Dancing with the governor.
Yeah. Oh, the dancing with the governor's daughter was awesome for the first couple of minutes, and then it got really fresh. Anyway, we're swapping that out for in the combat segment, grid-based tactical combat that uses a deck building mechanic so that we can introduce enormous diversity of skills without having to have crazy RPG skill trees. And you manage that. You manage your deck as a combination of your skills and your crew's skills. And then romance, we're handling through conversation and inventory and quest based so that, you may need to go, on some quests for your lovers and for your crew, right? To be able to upgrade your crew, get more skills for them, be able to tweak their cards. They also may have activities like, find a lost love or, settle an old debt or whatever that you may do for your. So it's kind of, bringing a lot of what we did in the Shadowrun Returns series to kind of the open world nature of a Sid Meier's Pirates.
Great.
I love much longer answer than
I love it. That's great. I have many deep dive questions for what you just said, but we'll get there in a minute. So Zach, like for our listeners who aren't familiar with Sea of Legends, like give us the background pitch for how this game first came around as a board game, and then like how did you guys get to what is it as a board game, and how did you guys get to today where it's becoming a video game?
Yeah, so I guess the elevator pitch is it's an open world pirate game where at the beginning of the game, you pick out a card to be your nemesis or a character to be your nemesis and a character to be your lover. And you place tokens that represent each of their kind of next story beat across the board where it tells you to. When you go to those story beats, you'll pull up your phone or computer to do kind of a choose your own adventure storyline. And all of your stories across the board will affect each other. So like if you go start helping the Spanish build a base or a fort, someone might come and say, hey, we're really worried about the Spanish fort that's being built. Let's, go over there and destroy it. And so I will have a quest to go destroy the fort before you finish it. And so we'll have to race across the board to do that. But at the same time, it's not just us playing. We also picked two kind of enemy factions to play with, something like the Undead or the British. These factions will have objectives that they try to compete. But one of the things that make them really fun is players take turns controlling what they do. And so when it's my turn to control the British, I have to move them towards their objective. But if I can just, take them on a slight detour to hit you,
on their way to the objective,
I can easily, use them to hit you. I can also use them to fight each other. And that's always fun when you have the big enemy Colossus fight the, British general.
Sure.
Even though they're neither player characters, it's like this epic kind of Godzilla battle in the middle of the board.
I mean, for listeners who haven't seen this game, like it's the miniature element is like on the level of like cool minis are not, or any one of those like top level. Like I actually kickstarted the game to be like, yo, this guy's got all the factions that are in Pirate Borg, and he's got all the same flavors of like enemies, like we actually use your giant, what's the Dread Tide, like Conquistador skeleton?
The skeletal Colossus. Yes.
Yes. He is actually like the mini that we use at our like official convention games, because the boss in the Pirate Borg adventure at the end is a giant Conquistador skeleton. So like, while the vibe of Sea of Legends is a little more like sunny than the Dark Caribbean, like they're very bright colors. It's the factions are like so dead on. So kudos to you for creating such a world that I'm so drawn to, How did the video game part come into play? Like, you guys are a father and son team, which isn't all that common, especially coming from two different sides of the industry. Like, when did you guys decide, like, hey, let's team up and turn this sweet board game world into a video game?
Well, so my history goes back and forth, as does Zach. Many years in tabletop and many years in video games. And Zach has also, moved back and forth. So is our other son, Nate, who's also a game designer.
Is he working on this project?
No, he's busy with other projects. He's contributed some ideas on the card mechanics, but he's really focused on other projects. And then just to finish the family out, our youngest son, Lucas, is the composer of all the music for the game and working on some of the art. So
wow, family business. I love it.
Yeah. It's like it's really actually pretty special to have everybody working on the project together. So how'd this come about? Well, for many years I've been working on a project called Adventure Forge, which is a no-code video game authoring platform, so that people who can't code, like myself, I coded like 40 years ago, but that was back when you had to rub sticks together to try to get heat. So for those that can't code but want to make games, tell stories. And so I've been working on this platform for a while. It's really an outgrowth of the work of the editors I designed at Harebrained Schemes for Shadowrun Returns, and then just like many generations further along. And we've been looking for what would be a great title to build on the platform, now that we've got the tool in a really robust place. And Zach, with the board game, just presented such a fun world, and the interactive part of it, the part that the choose your own adventure part, which is actually enormously sophisticated in terms of how it does all that back end story integration, was built on an earlier version of Adventure Forge. So it's kind of a natural to want to take it. And as you mentioned, between Pirates of the Spanish Main and Aerial Pirates and Crimson Skies, I've been a pirate fan for a long time. So I was like, Zach, could we borrow your world and do a video game in it?
He's like, fine, Dad, fine. Yeah, I think the app part of Sea of Legends, the board game, is actually really cool. It's kind of reminds me of like the second edition of Mansions of Madness. If you guys have played that, you used to have to play with a keeper who would be kind of like a dungeon master, and that was like I would always play as a keeper. My wife would be like, "You just kill me like every spot," and I'm like, "This is not fun for my investigators." So when we got the Sea of Legends with the app, it's cool because you just pick the NPCs, your enemy and your nemesis and your lover and the monsters, and it tells you like what to do. It's a really cool system. Yeah. So
one of the things that I think a lot of people responded really fun to is kind of the lover nemesis system in Sea of Legends, especially points where you're like doing quests for your lover, or you acquire a second lover and seeing how that plays out.
As all good pirates should, right?
So one of the things that was important to me is really kind of carrying that kind of fun, romancy section into the video game as well, and having it be kind of important to your storylines and gameplay in general, right? So we were thinking of situations like if you go to a French tavern, you're likely to see French characters, but like any good pirate game, you might backstab the French, a year later or whatever. But if you had a French lover that you had kind of grown close to in that time you were allied, there's a chance when you go raiding a French ship that she's the captain of that ship. And now between turns, she's yelling dialogue at you. So we're mixing that dialogue and this kind of strategic combat. And so you might be able to convince your lover, if she loves you that much, she might just lay down her arms, or she might be calling this the last straw of the relationship. You kill my crew, we're done.
It does tend to put a cramp on the pillow talk if you've just slaughtered her crew.
Yeah, it feels so very like Pirates of the Caribbean, but also like Errol Flynn. Like very dramatic. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I guess, can you maybe tell us a little about like what's the experience like for a player when they boot this thing up? Like, is it single player? Are you starting in a port? I'm assuming from the pitch that you have just a dinghy and you need to climb your way up to having a fleet. Like, what's the experience like for a new player?
Yeah, it is. It is a single player game, and it's one that we're shooting for like a 10-hour-ish playthrough, because there's enough games out there that require your entire life, and we didn't want to be one of those. That it's like, it's 100 hours of gameplay, and also just realistically on the budgets that that we're able to raise through Kickstarter. But the other reason that we want it to be a 10-hour game is because it's very emergent in gameplay. So I think you'll get really different experiences for each time you play through it, and that's going to come in a wide variety of different ways. One is the factions. So depending on how many factions we end up with in the game, which is going to be a factor of funding, we don't want too many factions operating at the same time, just like in the tabletop game where you choose two factions. Here we'll have kind of the human factions will always be present, the English, the Spanish, and the French, but then there'll be one or potentially two supernatural factions that you'll choose. So that choice in the beginning has obviously a really big impact on how the game, each playthrough is going to play out.
The player gets to pick that?
Yeah, that's what we're thinking, is that depending on how many factions we end up with, that would be a choice you'd make at the beginning of the game before your playthrough starts. And we start with two player characters, Captain Blood, obviously very related to our friend.
Never heard of Captain Blood before.
Well, there's a pal of mine called Raphael Sabatini, and he told me all about the guy. And I think he's pretty cool. So we wrote him in. And so that's one choice. And his backstory very much is Raphael's to set it up. But of course, where he goes from there, completely up to you, the player. And then we have Captain Jack, which is one of the captains from the tabletop game. And we've written a more, she had a cute little backstory about one fashion. Now we've written a bigger backstory for her. And so you'll have those two choices as initial starting characters. Mm-hmm. And then there's going to be another 6 or so legendary pirates that'll be drawn from the tabletop and or history that will be sailing around the Caribbean. And if you defeat any of those, not only do you gain a lot of pirate cred in this playthrough, but you also unlock that character as a starting player character in future playthroughs.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Very cool.
So I think that also gives a nice encouragement to go back and play again with different settings. But yeah, so you choose your factions, what factions are active, you choose your player character, and you start in a port where your dinghy is docked, and you've got one crew member that came with your selection of the captain and a little bit of gold to spend. And so in port, you can then start to make choices in terms of how you're outfitting your ship, or if you're using that money to hire another crew, using it to bribe to maybe get some information on the shipping lanes and information on where rich cargoes might be. And then you set sail, and you can decide what you're doing. Are you going to go off and attack a merchant ship? If so, which faction? Because if I'm attacking Spanish ships, well, then I'm not going to be very welcome in Spanish ports, right? Sure. Or do I decide, actually my strategy, quote unquote, is I'm going to befriend the Spanish and work my way up, in their society until I have access to the information of where those really rich black ships are sailing. And then I'm going to betray them and attack the really rich black ships. But until then, I will be known as a friend of the Spanish. So I'll go off and attack, the Spanish are currently at war with the English. I'm going to go attack an English ship, bring all that loot to a Spanish port, make some notoriety. And so I bring it in, and I can sell off it. The Spanish may take a little cut of the English treasure for access to their port. And I get invited to the governor's mansion for a little talk. And he says, you keep sacking, British ships, we could have a wonderful relationship here. Those are the kinds of paths you can choose as you decide to, forward your piratical career.
It sounds very, very much like a modern Sid Meier's Pirates, which of course is very exciting to me, having like 100% of that game multiple times.
Well, it's like if you're gonna steal from the best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I can't honestly, like, I mean, I know Civilization is like a huge deal and Sid never needs to do anything ever again. But I'm like, man, it's 2024. Like, when are we going to get another Sid Meier's Pirates? And here we go. Right. So
it should be. I mean, he was on a 20-year cycle, so it should be any day now.
Yeah, that's true, man. The first version I played was the black and white Mac one. And, and people are like, oh, did you play the old Sid Meier's Pirates? I was like, oh, honey, I played the old one. Okay. Like, I played the one where it was like when you were in the middle of the Gulf sailing the wrong direction, you might as well take a nap because, it would take forever to get from one side to the other. So I guess I have a couple questions. I want to know more about like its relationship to that game. Like, do ports get stronger if you bring them treasure? Like, are you tracking reputation with each faction? Those kinds of things.
So some of these I have answers to and some I don't because we're, still early in development.
Well, I mean, that's exciting though, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So yes, tracking reputation is really important. And this is something, that Zach did in the tabletop game. And we have capability to kind of do that on steroids with the computer game. But yeah, it is tracking reputation with each faction, both the human and the non-human, as well as tracking relationships, right? So if you betray a fellow captain, right, then they remember that, right? Or if you had a lover which you didn't follow up on and pursue her quests, and she or he flips to a nemesis, right? They remember those actions. So we are tracking lots of reputation and relationships throughout the game. In terms of do ports get stronger based upon how much money you bring them, I would say likely yes, but we haven't really worked through the economics that far yet.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, did you guys play a lot of Sid Meier's Pirates?
Oh, yes.
I guess why don't we like zoom back in time? Like, can we dig into your like guys' pirate influences? I mean, I know you mentioned being into pirates since you were young, Zach, but like, what other things are there any things that I don't know about somehow that you can tell me about,
So, I mean, I always loved like just the swashbuckling genre in general. So like the Errol Flynn movies you were talking about, it's not a pirate movie, but I always kind of group it with it. Have you ever seen Scaramouche?
No.
Very classic swashbuckling film.
Also written by Raphael Sabatini.
Highly recommend.
No.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah. I will definitely check that out.
So yeah, like grew up with those. And then Pirates of the Caribbean came out and I had it. Pirates of the Caribbean birthday party. Yeah. It was actually really fun because it had just come out in the US and my dad was in China for work and was able to bring back a bootleg DVD copy while it was still in theaters here. So we were able to have the party even though it was not out yet.
That's amazing. I remember like seeing the trailer, the teaser trailer in the theater and being like, finally pop culture is going to care about pirates. Like finally I could get a decent costume at the costume store, because some people are those people who are like, they want to hold that thing they have. Like, I want to keep pirates for myself. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, let's get it out there in the world, more pirate media, the better.
And Zach, your obsession with Pirates of the Caribbean goes long before the film. Your mother still tells the story of when you were like 5 or 6 and we were at Disneyland and you did Pirates of the Caribbean ride like 20 times in a row. It was like that was the entire day. It was getting on, getting off, going out.
That was my intro.
I actually did that again in college. We had to pick like a room and 3D model it. I went to a video game college, so we were building environments. And I was like, I'm going to do Pirates of the Caribbean, right? But I could not find a good map online of it. I went to college in Sarasota, Florida, so I had a season pass to Disney World. So I convinced my then girlfriend to just go on Pirates of the Caribbean again and again with me until we could draw out the whole map.
Do you still have it?
The map I made or the map? The level?
Oh, I guess either.
I don't, unfortunately. We were using Unreal 4, so I'll have to see if I can dig that up.
Dude, you gotta send me or put it up on YouTube or something, like a fly through of that. That sounds amazing. It sounds like we would have been friends our whole lives. It's just not taken till, because I mean, like literally, if you go to my website and go to About, it's like the first thing is like, my parents took me to Disney World, when I was 5, and ruined my life. So.
Fortunately for Luke, but unfortunately for Zach. But Lucas, our younger brother, his younger brother, who was the composer and artist, was with me on a trip to California when we were snuck our way into the set of Pirates of the Caribbean 3.
Wow.
And so we were wandering all around. It was, a couple of days before they were going to start filming. It was the one, all the houses on stilts in the swamp.
Oh, yeah.
That environment. And at the time, I was working a lot with Gore Verbinski, who was the director. I was working right as the first movie came out. And so it was fun to kind of see that experience through his eyes and, how the first movie came about and then what happened to the franchise after the first movie, all through his perspective, which was really interesting.
What's your guys' take on all 5 movies? Are you guys like, I'm in all the way? Are only the first one's good or the first 3 are good?
Ooh, all right. We're not talking religion or politics, but we're close. We're close here.
Spicy hot takes here.
Yeah, all right. From my perspective, the first movie is in the top 10 movies ever made. I mean, it is.
It's a masterpiece. We can all agree, right?
It is. Yeah. It is a watertight script. I mean, it works.
Pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. It works on every level, right? I mean, there's no plot holes, right? So it works, and the character development is rich. These are people you get to know and you care about. So yeah, it is a masterpiece of a movie. That's also basically impossible to follow up, right? I mean, it's like, let's make the sequel to, The Maltese Falcon or Casablanca. It's like, really? That's going to be a hard act to follow, isn't it?
I mean, this is how I felt with The Matrix. I was like, The Matrix to me is perfection. I don't think you can get any better. And guess what? You can't. So
exactly. I think they were given an impossible task. And then I think that impossible task was made much more difficult because of Jerry Bruckheimer.
Sure.
The first movie, I mean, related to me by Gore. So, I mean, I was, but he said basically everybody ignored it. It was a low budget movie on a theme park ride. It was originally written as an animated film and then redone, it was kind of in storage and the writers found it and brought it to Gore and they picked it back up and, reconceived it as live action. But it was basically nobody was really paying attention. And so the guys got to really hone it and do it themselves. And then, and then after it became this blockbuster, Bruckheimer got in and does what Bruckheimer does, right? Which is we'll turn all the stunts and explosions to 11 and we'll turn the plot consistency and characterization down to, we'll be generous and say a 3.
Yeah, I still enjoyed them, but I like that scene in the second one where they're dealing with the natives on the island and like Jack has to do all this like aerobatics with like stilts in the canyon and it's like am I watching a cartoon, a CG cartoon? Like what is this, I mean, I still love those movies, but what's your take, Zach? What do you think on 2 through 5?
Oh man, well, some of the visuals I absolutely love, like when they go to the pirate town.
Yeah.
Shipwreck Cove.
Oh yeah, Shipwreck.
I believe it was called. That was gorgeous, right? The story I feel like could use some help. Like consistency and all that fun stuff. But I'd watch them again. They wouldn't be my first pick.
Have you guys read the Tim Powers on Stranger Tides?
I did, yes. I read it before it became the plot, and I loved the book. It was fantastic.
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know this book, I mean, Disney technically optioned it for the 4th movie, but they basically just option using Blackbeard and the Fountain of Youth. Yeah. Everything else is totally different. In the original book, it's like the inspiration for Secret of Monkey Island. Like that book is amazing.
It is.
And I feel so heartbroken that because Disney made a movie of it within the past 20 years, but that we're never going to get a like proper adaptation of that, because that would be an absolutely incredible movie.
I agree. And it was a great book. I think there is, as Zach said, there's a lot of great visuals. There's some good funny lines, some good action sequences. But to me, they don't hold up as real movies,
For me, on the RPG designer side, like I will say, the Disney art department is amazing. Even if they've did things I didn't like, I can still pull up, concept art from those movies and be like, this stuff is incredible.
Well, Jim Brink, who was the art director on the films, a really good guy, got to know him well, actually. And he, he was supportive of the board game because I reached out to him when we were doing the first board game and he had fun kibitzing with us on some of the, some sketches and stuff. But he's a brilliant art director and he did an amazing job on those films.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, we got to pivot because I have to talk to you about Pirates of the Spanish Main. This game, I mean, to be honest with you, it's probably why I ended up getting into the industry because I started playing this game. We bought it at CVS and started playing it. And I was like, wait, what is this? This is actually like really cool. And we like bought more and more and more. And I bought so many packs of Pirates of the Spanish Main. I ended up winning the national tournament at Gen Con.
Oh, that is so cool.
And I won a complete set of Davy Jones's Curse. And then like, you know, I got kind of out of gaming. And then like 10, 20, 15 years later, I was on tour. My other career that I've recently stepped away from was concert lighting design. And I was on tour down in South America at these old Spanish forts. And I just started playing D&D. And I was thinking to myself, man, you know, it'd be so cool if I ran a D&D campaign using all those old Spanish. And it wasn't just the game. Like it was like the lore too, you know, like all the cursed and all the different, like, oh, I love that game. So tell us about like your involvement in that game. Like, I don't know exactly what you did for WizKids back then, but I want to know everything. And like, tell me what it was like back then, you know?
Sure. So WizKids started actually as a result of Zach and his brother Nate saving up all their money and buying Warhammer. And they were like, what, you were 10 and 12 or 8 and 10, something like that?
No, we were younger. I think I was 8 and Nate was like 6.
Okay, so yeah, very young. And so they saved up. They really wanted this game. And, you know.
Like, are we talking, Zach, are we talking Warhammer Fantasy?
No, it was 40K.
Okay.
Which after that, like fantasy better, like the visuals, just because like I like fantasy more.
But we're talking
at
like
that time we were young and
we're talking like mid 90s, right?
So this was 2000. Yeah, would have been like 2000, 99 or 2000.
Yeah. Okay. Late 90s, early zeros. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and so I watched these guys, you know, wanting to play this figure game badly, and not, you know, it's impossible, right? You can't assemble them with super glue, eye hand coordination to paint them. The rule books are, you know, that thick, and you know it takes 17 hours to play. And it just kind of dawned on me after being in the industry for, at that point, you know, 20 years, how difficult we had made it to join the industry, to become a player. You know?
Yeah, a lot of buy-in.
Yeah, and also just, you know, so many mechanics and so much time and, you know, and so on. So it inspired me to kind of step back and think about how could we make miniature figure games much more accessible and affordable. And so that resulted in a game called Mage Knight, which where we had.
I figured that's what you were going to say. Yeah.
So that's where Mage Knight came from, and that's what gave birth to WizKids, was to produce Mage Knight and then HeroClix, and then we did the BattleTech universe on that. So
real quick to step back, because you never actually said, for people that don't know, you founded WizKids. Right.
Yeah.
So you were running the company.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was only 3 people.
Yeah, I pieced that together, but
Sorry.
That was definitely. I mean,
I designed
remember that
Mage Knight and then founded WizKids to produce it. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I mean, I remember Mage Knight was huge when I was a kid. Like tons of people were playing that, and then HeroClix even more so.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so those have done really well, and then we got acquired by Topps in New York, guys who make bubblegum and trading cards, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so I started thinking about, well, how can I wanted to create a game that was sold where the trading cards were.
So you're owned by Topps, but you're still like running creative or whatever at WizKids. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. Yeah. So they're in New York. We're in Seattle. We're running all of our own product lines. It was a really good relationship. I enjoyed working with those guys a lot. But we had their distribution network that we could take advantage of, right? Which offered us like this access to the front of Target or CVS or Walmart and so on. Where as WizKids, we were never getting there before. And so I wanted to create a game that was all completely there, right? It wasn't just a booster pack that was there. It was the full game that was there, hanging on that hook. So I had been seeing at the time these pop-out styrene models, which I always love anything 3D. And I'm a fidgeter, so I'm always playing with stuff. So I was really digging those kind of pop-out things that you build. I'm like, we should use these to make a miniatures game, right? Let's make a game based on this. So I go to Pirates because I love Pirates, and I was like, okay. And started thinking about what that mechanics was for that. And I brought in James Ernest, who's, in town here and who I've always had a lot of respect for. And he did a take on it, which was a very good, solid initial take on the mechanics. And then we brought in Mike Slinker, and he did a bunch of kind of initial ship development and crew development. And then basically Mike Mulvihill and I sat down and kind of like roped it all together and really evolved it back, so we kind of kicked it off and then took it and evolved it back, wrote all the fiction for it. And Mike did all of the balance work, to really get the ships to work together. And then actually a really cool part was Julianne Parsons, who was our VP head of production, she said, well, you've got a whole game here, except it doesn't have the die. They have to have a die somewhere else, right? And I was like, she was like, well, why don't we put the die in the pack? I'm like, think we can do that? And she's like, I think we can. And so we went to China, we worked it out. So yeah, then it was actually a complete game in every pack, which was super cool.
Man, I feel like I'm like prying back into like an ancient tome of mystery about a huge portion of my life. Okay, so I mean, like the game obviously was really successful, I'm assuming, in the first push, enough so that you guys got the Pirates of the Caribbean license, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, what was that like?
So that was funny because, we had been with HeroClix, right? We were doing a ton of licensing, right? We had, because we licensed.
Was there a Star Wars HeroClix?
No, but there was a Star Wars Punch-Out game eventually.
That's what I knew. There was a an X-Wing thing.
Yeah, we never got the Star Wars figure license, but we had all the Marvel universe and DC universe, and it was all cross-playable and so on. And so we had a good relationship with Disney, and I tried to do Pirates of the Caribbean when we started, and they just weren't going for it. I don't think they got it, So that's why we made our own universe, and we did the whole Spanish Main. And then I forget which film it was, but they were doing another film in the series. And so at this point, we went back and said, well, now they could see it. I think they maybe just couldn't visualize it before, but now that they saw it and saw it worked, and and saw that the kind of distribution we were getting and success with it, they were like, yeah, we're all on board now. So yeah, then there was a series that were licensed officially from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so what happened? Did it just run its course, or did you move on, or like why isn't it still exist,
So after he left Topps, Tiffany O'Brien was running the line for them. Oh, yeah. And so I was talking to her, and she was saying that they actually ended Pirates of the Spanish Main on its most successful year.
Wow.
So it continued going up. What the issue is the price of oil had also gone up. And so for those that haven't played, it's all on styrene cards, and the main component of styrene is oil. So the cost was going up so fast that they were not thinking that they were going to be profitable, right? So they're like, we better stop it now, even though our sales numbers are off the charts.
That's so crazy, because I was like, man, this game was hot fire, and then all of a sudden it was like gone, and I was just like, oh, I don't know what, I thought maybe the sales dropped off. Well, very, very interesting to hear about. So like, I have to ask, is there like a license for that game? Is there like any hope for it coming back? Like if I wanted to make up a new RPG for it, is that an option? Like,
well, it's like most things in my life, it's a complex answer.
Sure.
The concept of the game is open, right? I mean, you could do that. And it's over the course of doing the Sea of Legends, both for the tabletop and now even more so with the video game, we've certainly heard from a lot of fans that were like, boy, it would be great if you could bring that back.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's something frankly, we'll look into, but I don't know if we could get, it might be a game, what do they call it? A spiritual successor.
Spiritual successor, sure.
Because I think getting the actual rights to the previous ships and all that kind of stuff may not be feasible.
Yeah, okay,
but well, it's something, I mean, heck, I'll take a run at anything.
Well, I'll have my people call your people, right? You know what I'm saying? Because I'm saying like, if we made a pirate board version of that game, like, oh my God, that would be amazing. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, that's good. Our people can do lunch one time and tell us how it goes.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, well, let's get back to Sea of Legends. This is actually a good tie-in because I want to talk a little bit about the team. You have such a cool team listed. Obviously, Zach, you're part of the team. But just like the dossier of the games that these people have worked on, I mean, I'm seeing Ascension, Ubisoft, Skull and Bones, obviously, Jordan, your resume. And I also want to give a shout out to Jeffrey Campbell, who's the reason that we're chatting today. Jeffrey wrote a lot of the character dialogue in Darkest Dungeon, which is one of my favorite video games of all time. Yeah. He also worked on a really cool Pirates of the Caribbean video game that never launched. Jeffrey's
awesome. Jeffrey's awesome. And I do think, I want to say this, a video game by trade and tabletop by heart, So.
Yeah. When he's like, hey, I worked on Darkest Dungeon. I was like, what? Like, did we just become best friends? So yeah, tell me about your team. Like, what are these people doing? Like, how many different departments are you guys? Like, what all do these people do?
Well, right now they're all waiting to see how the Kickstarter goes.
What all will they do? Everybody go back this thing on Kickstarter, by the way, if you haven't yet.
So a lot of the people that are lined up there, like Jeffrey and Andrew McIntosh, and are on the writing side. And as we've talked about, right, there is a lot of fiction that we want to bring in here, right? A lot of the interactive storytelling. So, and Anthea and JC Hutchins, right? These are all writers that I've worked with in the past. Well, Jeffrey and I know each other. We haven't had the pleasure of working together yet, but excited to do so.
Okay.
But Andrew was our lead writer at Harebrained Schemes. So with Dragonfall, Shadowrun Hong Kong, and BattleTech, and he's just an incredible guy. Really understands not only great story and character, but interweaving that with mechanics, which is great.
Yeah.
Anthea was narrative designer in Lamplighters League, and then she was with us here at Endless Adventures, working on another little game project we had called Tales of Fortunata. Really talented and great. I think brings really fun perspective to the writing and interactions. JC Hutchins and I wrote a novel together about 15 years ago. Actually, that was it was actually optioned by bringing conversation threads back together. The novel we wrote was a transmedia book set in a kind of a haunted mental health facility, and it was really dark and wonderfully twisted. And it was optioned by the director of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh wow, nice.
So bringing that thread back together. So, and that's part of what we were working with him on. So these are all really talented people that I've had the pleasure of working with in the past, and they're all basically all contribute to the writing to it, and how much all depends on the scope we're doing and how much their availability is. Justin Gary, who's a designer of Ascension, longtime friend, and we've been helping each other out on projects for a long time, and so he'll serve as kind of a design consultant on the deck building aspects. We won't be able to have him full or even part-time, but he's already serviced as a great kind of mentor for us and help us on the deck building side.
Yeah, well, he knows deck building for sure. There's no question about that.
So he's kind of our design guidance there on that side.
Can we talk a little bit about the deck building? Because I feel like that's in the subtitle for this thing, and I don't think that's all that common of a mechanic in a video game. We obviously see it in tabletop all the time. Can you tell us a little about how that works? Like, does every pirate start with the same deck? How do they get new cards? What kind of cards do they get? Are they only in combat? Are they in naval combat as well?
Yeah.
How does naval combat work? That kind of thing,
Yeah, I can tell you some things we know, and I can make up some things we don't.
A spiritual answer is fine. I'm just curious,
So yeah, the idea is that when you choose an initial starting character, it comes with that character comes with a deck, and it's a small deck. Just like if you look at probably the most famous of the computer-based deck builders is Slay the Spire.
Okay.
And so there you start with I think 8 or 10 cards in your deck initially. So that's the kind of scope of deck that you would start with for either Captain Jack or Captain Blood. And then when you add a crew member, we're looking at crew members being something like 2 to 4 cards that they bring with them. And then those get added into what's called your battle deck. Right. So your pirate captain always has all their cards in the deck, and then each crew member adds their cards to the deck. And so then the battle deck, and that's part of the decision when you go into a combat of which crew members you take with you, then is part of the deck building for that combat. Right, because they automatically bring their cards with them. And then the mechanics that we're working on, and these are early days still, but the way that it's shaping up at the moment is when they take wounds, for instance, their cards may become kind of blank, right? So now let's say there was a 4-card character and they take one of their cards, take a wound. Well, one of their cards now is a blank card, still in your deck, still in your hand. When you bring that character in, it's just like in any kind of deck builder, it's a dead card, but it's taking up space and you want to try to get that dead card out of your hand. And you can do that by, trying to go and heal the character, right? Which is why you may invest in a surgeon, or if it's a curse, you might have to go on a little mini quest to clear up that card. Or, in a severe case, where if they take a really a mortal wound, then it may remove a card permanently, right? Which in some respects means, okay, I don't have a dead card in my hand, but I also lose the access to that attack or whatever that ability was, right? So in terms of earning new cards, in terms of where to use cards, so they'd be used in the tactical combat, which would be boarding actions and land combat, so raiding towns or skirmishes, land skirmishes. We are still a little on the fence about how that transfers to naval combat, though.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't have a solid answer on naval combat. Well, and this is going to ship this podcast coming out next week, so we're going to really reveal another feature next week. Which is called Duels of Honor. Because if we go back to Errol Flynn, right, there's the scene on the beach with Basil Rathbone, right? That is,
of course,
that is the archetypical pirate captain's, working through an issue. And that's how you do it with cutlasses on the beach.
Yeah.
And so that concept of a mano battle duel is something that we're going to introduce into the game. And that also uses a different form of cards, right? So that doesn't use your battle deck, but you'll have the opportunity to learn different dueling styles. Right, like in the classic romance novels, right? You know, the pirate novels. He's learned the Portuguese style, or we can go to the classic Princess Bride, right?
Yeah,
which is the best dueling movie ever.
Oh, absolutely. Why are you smiling? I know something you do not know. What's that? I am not left-handed.
Exactly.
I love that. Yeah, not left-handed has to be one of the styles.
Absolutely is already. Yeah. That's already in the design doc. So so the idea is you learn different styles, and those come with different decks, and so you choose which style you're going to use for this duel. And then those decks evolve over the course of a single play. So you can use combos within it to cause the deck to evolve within the single duel, as opposed to a combat deck, which evolves over the course of your entire campaign.
So have you thought about maybe doing it like a third naval combat deck that's based off like the kind of ship that you have? The different ships have different, So
as my dad mentioned, naval combat's still very up in the air. And one of the major reasons is we still want our crew decks to somehow affect your kind of naval combat deck. So we want it to primarily be what type of ship you have, because that's going to be the biggest difference on the water. But then we're kind of debating how many cards come from your crew to affect that.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And so that's what we're kind of looking at right now, how to make sure that's
fun. Very exciting. How many ships are there slated out at the moment?
We're definitely going to at least have all the ones from the board game.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So that's
like sloop, brigantine, like man of war. Yeah. Okay. But you're not looking at doing like 20 or 30 ships, right?
I think that's one of those things where it really comes to budget.
Yeah.
Right?
TBD. Yeah.
Yeah. Because to me, when you're playing, especially like Sid Meier's Pirates, the funnest part to me was like upgrading your ship, right?
Yeah.
And finding new ships. And if you don't have enough kind of places where you can upgrade to, that you're losing a bit there,
sure,
right?
Sure.
And so that was one of the reasons I really wanted to start people off on the kind of little dinghy with a cannon, the same one from the board game. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, no, I do. I've definitely played the game. I don't have anybody in town to play it with, so that's why.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I was like, man, if you start on that dinghy, everything you get is an upgrade, right? So I also really wanted to make it where like you couldn't just go from your starter ship to a man of the line, right? Yeah. Or a ship of the line, right? Like you had to make these kind of intermediate steps in between, because
we have the same progression in Pirate Board where often if you'll start with a raft. People are like, oh yeah, we're going to take the ship of the line. I was like, okay, well there's 3 of you. Yeah, there's 300 of them. So what's it look like, man?
Let's see you dodge that broadside.
Exactly.
And as much as we love Pirates of the Caribbean, the idea of sailing off with a full rigged 3-masted ship with 2 people really isn't going to happen.
Yeah. That's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen. I'm very excited to see this thing come to fruition. Zach, I want to talk a little bit about the lore in Sea of Legends. Like, like we get a lot of story in the cards, but I feel like when you look at those factions, like the little, I know you guys are going to add to this in the video game, but when you get those like little paragraphs, like, I'm like, dude, there's a story document sitting on these guys' hard drives that goes a lot deeper into this. Like, can you tell us a little about the lore? Like, I also want to know, let's assume everything goes as a plan, how many of the evil factions which ones are potentially going to get in? And have you guys ever thought about doing an RPG,
Oh, we have, actually. To go back to the board game, one of the things that we really wanted to kind of like focus on was at the beginning of every game, it's just the like human factions, right? Like it's the Caribbean, and then the supernatural creeps into your game.
Sounds familiar to me.
At certain states, right? And so like different factions we've worked on definitely have different levels of kind of like backstory we've written. For those that haven't played the game, I think there are kind of 15 factions now, I want to say.
That looks about right. Yeah. I made a list of them for this, so. And
they all kind of like span the distance. So you have ones that are like full on, like these are empire factions, like the Dread Tide are coming out, they're your zombies and they're taking towns and they're, doing that whole thing. But then you also have like different sets where I kind of call them cult factions, where they're more mischievous, like the Order of Nocturnus, right? Yeah. Their premise is they're masquerade as normal like priest and will like start up in your church, and act all normal. But under the church, they kind of like borrow it out and build their kind of cult headquarters where they summon demons, right? How that one works is if there's so many cult, like sanctuaries or whatever they build, they summon their demon. Of course, the demon's first goal is to go around and eat all of his followers, right? So
sounds on brand for a demon faction.
Yeah, exactly. And if the demon eats all of its followers, you lose, right?
Yeah.
And so we definitely wanted to bring both types of factions into the video game as well. So we have, kind of your secret cults and your more like empire factions. Some other kind of secret cult things we have is like we have this big harpy that's like almost kind of Greekish harpy, and you have kind of its followers that protect its eggs, right? And players in the board game can steal eggs, and when they do, they get a lot of notoriety. But as soon as they steal an egg, the harpy goes from all docile and like not wanting to attack anything to you being its objective, like it's going to go fuck you up until you get
full battle mode. Yeah.
And so it's like kind of like hot potato, where it's like the longer you're willing to hold the egg, the more victory points you get, but you're like really messed up. So like, I think that would be another faction or like kind of cult that would be fun to add. It's like, hey, you find all this loot. Do you take the egg? And as soon as you do, you're like, what are these things coming after me? Right.
Yeah. Wait, so which ones are like, bare minimum going to make their way into the video game? So
the ones for sure right now that are making into the game are the
Dreadtide.
Dreadtide for sure.
The children of Talaylock.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the merfolk.
And then the Withering Maw cult.
And that's like a kind of like a Kraken cult, right?
Yeah, those three are for sure, and then we'll see what else we get to.
How many stretch goals do we have to get the cursed souls in? Because I mean, like undead pirates are cool, but ghost pirates, man, now you're speaking my language,
So one of the things that we added was a skin pack for anyone it's free for anyone that backs at the powder monkey level or above, which lets you switch out the skins of all the playable characters.
Oh, cool.
And it makes Captain Blood's alternate skin a ghost in the vein of the Ghost Pirates.
Yep, a nice little lean into what you're talking about there. And Captain Jack becomes a vampire. So
great. I love that. So one of the adventures in my new book is a vampire adventure. So that's very I'm into it. You've got me. Take my money. Everybody who's listening. So there's probably a week left when you hear this. Please go back this game. It looks very exciting.
Hold fast, wretched sailor. We brace for the Broadside Barrage.
First TTRPG you ever played?
Dungeons and Dragons. Bought it from Dave Arneson in Gary Gygax's house.
What? Are you serious? Okay, we have to talk about that. Was it OD&D, like first edition, or like pre-first?
It was first edition. It was the year it came out. TSR was basically just Dave and Gary at the time, and the store was the first floor of Gary's house, and it was the only place you could buy it. Took my friends up from Chicago, and it was a kind of a big sale, like 6 copies or whatever that we bought. And Dave was like, "Hey, that was a big sale. You guys want me to take you on an adventure?" Yes. So we went into the kitchen and sat down at the kitchen table, and he actually.
This is not even fair.
I know. There are some advantages to being old, Luke, and this is one of them. But they had this like little bank teller thing set up, so like it was like a perforated piece of board, and he sat on the other side of it, so you couldn't see him. And Dave had an incredible voice and booming voice, and so it was just this absolutely amazing experience. Every once in a while, this hand would come out like with dice. Roll these, and then we come back, and it was like, anyway, he killed us in a couple hours with rats, small ones, not big ones.
Wow.
But yeah, that was my first. Well, actually, I cheat. I was playing it that summer at summer camp. I was a junior counselor at summer camp, and that's what caused me to go and buy it. So, but yeah, D&D,
no, I'll take your cheating answer. That's a much better answer. Yeah, I saw somewhere online that you actually got started writing adventures for Traveler, which I thought was really cool.
That's right. Yeah, so I was doing. In my failed college career, I was at the Merchant Marine Academy and learned how to do a lot of drafting. And so I was doing floor plans, deck plans for Traveler spaceships, and started printing them up on our own and selling them. And Mark Miller, who became a mentor of mine, was the creator of Traveler. He saw them and he was like, hey, you should do those under license. So we did, and then we started writing adventures, and that's how we started Fast.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you're gonna have you back on the show, and we'll talk about actual RPGs. So, how about you, Zach?
My answer is much simpler. Birthright, the old D&D module.
Nice. How about most recent TTRPG you've played?
Probably Blades in the Dark.
Oh, nice.
I still just play D&D with some
Like
friends, so
fifth edition?
Yeah, fifth.
Yeah, nice. First video game you were ever addicted to?
Do arcade games start? Because I
absolutely.
go back before video games, before
Yeah, no, that's
they were at home. Zaxxon, which is probably why I still make isometric games today, because it was one of the early ones.
So one of my earlier memories of a video game, and it was not my first video game, but maybe a more fun story. We were on vacation, and we were on vacation the week that Legend of Zelda came out. At that point, I think my dad just decided he had heard too much news and had to play it then. So while we were on vacation, he went out and bought an N64, a copy of Zelda, and we just played it on vacation.
So you're talking Ocarina of Time? Yeah.
Yeah, Ocarina of Time.
That is a great answer.
I don't think my mom was the happiest with that vacation because we just stayed the entire time in front of the couch.
Oh, that's amazing.
But I enjoyed that trip immensely.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, do you have a favorite Pirates of the Spanish Main faction or ship, if you can remember that back that far?
I honestly can't remember. And one does not come out as a oh my God, I remember that one. I guess I do remember doing the Chinese ships, and they were really fun and interesting just because it was fun to go off into the South China Seas for a little bit and play with really different characters. And some of the greatest pirates of all time were Chinese South China Sea pirates,
I mailed away for both of the large 10 masters. I've got the Jade Rebellion one and the cursed one. Yeah, those are cool ships. Nice. Yeah. Did you play, Zach?
Yeah. So I remember begging them forever to do the big Chinese treasure ship.
Yeah.
And it came out after I was playing, so I never actually got to play with it, but I did get the
ship.
I think
it's the Baochuan, I think is what it's called. Something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Wow. I got it. It's 10 feet away from me, so I could pull it out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I got a whole box, man. I went in deep in that game. Okay. Favorite Sea of Legends faction?
So I love the Merfolk only because, this is kind of a funny story. So in Sea of Legends, we have that ability to date named characters, right? And the first two factions we did was the Undead and the Merfolk. Right. And we had to come up with the 3 named characters. All of those named characters were going to be dateable. Right. That was fine with my friend and partner, Ryan. But then later we started adding more factions. Like we added a monkey faction. Right.
Yeah.
And he was like, we need to write in fiction that there are more than just monkeys in this faction because our named characters you're going to be dating. And I was like, well, you're dating fish with the merfolk and you're dating dead people and you draw the line.
You've already crossed the line. Yeah.
And he's like, yes, it's different for some reason.
Yeah.
So there's a cult around the monkeys of humans that you date because you can't date a monkey, but it's okay to date a fish or a
interesting.
Maybe the primates were too close to us. I mean,
maybe
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it was like he was thinking like dating your cousin kind of thing. It was a little.
Wow, that is a very interesting predicament. Yes.
I mean, one of the reasons we put in Dreadtide first is because it's definitely one of my favorite factions. I love being able to tap into the conquistadors and the Spanish culture and the obsession with the and the whole twisting of the Fountain of Youth. I thought was awesome.
Yeah, A+ for sure. Favorite video game console?
Well, I was creative director for Microsoft when we launched Xbox, so I have to say Xbox. It's in my contract.
I mean, I played a lot of Halo on the original Xbox, so I mean that's probably up there for me too. Yeah. How about you, Zach?
I probably ended up logging the most hours on an Xbox, but I still love N64. I spent so much time with GoldenEye and Zelda. Probably
it's
N64
a good one.
still.
It's a good one. If you were a character in a fantasy RPG, what would your class be?
Comic relief.
I had someone last week said I'd be the no line NPC in the background.
Well, that guy just stole my answer.
Sorry.
I'll go with a rogue. Be inconspicuous.
Perfect. RPG or video game setting you would most want to live in?
Maybe something peaceful, Stardew Valley or something. It's like just something nice and quiet, because living is different than fantasizing. And if you really want to live there, I'd want someplace that has plenty of food and not, marauding monsters or other people.
I think the same person who said that NPC thing also said Stardew Valley. So I think
who is this?
I think it was Johan, the creator of Morkborg. He's one of the creators of Morkborg. He's like,
oh, that's too funny.
Creates a very, very dark game, or it might have been a couple different people with that answer, but we recorded late yesterday. So
I think maybe Dungeon Siege, just because I spent a lot of time playing Dungeon Siege, and I can't take the peaceful answer. So I'll probably die very fast in a very violent world.
Add an entry to the What's in the Cargo Hold of the Ship of the Dead D100 table.
Nostradamus's brain.
Like that one.
I want to do with shrunken talking heads.
How many? Is it like a D? Give me a dice.
Like it's like a bundle.
Give me a die size, like D12.
Yeah, like a D12.
D12.
You know, so you might end up with like
D12
you know?
shrunken talking heads. I like that.
Yeah, that are just like a peanut gallery that just comment on everything you do in an insulting and demeaning manner.
Appropriate next question. Favorite size die?
I can't beat a percentile. I mean, 2 D10s work every time for me.
I'll go with the D6 because I make a lot of board games.
Yeah, sure. Favorite libation or beverage during your gaming sessions?
Depending upon the evening, it's either a beer, preferably like a Hefeweizen or a Japanese rice beer, or it's club soda with a splash of OJ if I need to go for duration, for length.
Well, once my brother made pina coladas, and I'm going to go with that. That was pretty great.
Good piratey answer too. Finally, I think we might have touched on this. Video or computer game you've logged the most hours playing?
I guess we should take off the table the ones we're making ourselves, because you live forever in those games. So of other people's games, well, Sid's on there for Pirates.
Would it be safe to assume that you mean like Pirates Gold, not the Xbox one, or you mean the Xbox one?
No, the PC. PC.
The PC one, the old,
the 20-ish year old one.
Oh, the same one, the remake, not the super old one. Yeah.
No, okay. I did the super old one, but I didn't. I spent more time in the more recent one.
The newer one was more addictive, I think. Yeah.
Tomb Raider 1, I mean, that was to me the birth of cinematic gaming, and I was really into that for a bunch. God, what else comes to mind? There's so many of them. We go through them. Well, you go, Zach, and I'll keep thinking.
The only game I got in trouble for playing too much was Elder Scrolls Oblivion.
Okay.
When that came out, because I think that was the first one we played that had it felt like countless hours of game time, and we just played, me and my brother played straight through until the machine was taken away from us.
Oh, you know what? I want to go back and touch on Kingdom Hearts, because that was one we played as a family, and I really love that. That was great.
Nice. That's very cool. It's cool that you guys have such a gaming thread in your family. That is definitely not a thing. And it's just me and my brother. My parents are like, what? Like my dad is like, you made how much on Kickstarter making a game? What is going on? He doesn't get it. I mean, he gets it. He just doesn't understand. He's not a gamer, so.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the show, guys. Sea of Legends, the CRPG is on Kickstarter now. Go back it. There's a link in the comments. Jordan, Zach, thank you so much for being here. Any closing thoughts? Anywhere they can find you on the internet?
Well, first, thank you, Luke, for inviting us on. And really a pleasure to talk Pirates. And thank you for your backing and support in many games over the years, and to your audience for helping us make this game. And no, that's the only thought to me, just some gratitude.
Likewise, thanks for having us. If you have my dad back, definitely ask him about his years being an Imagineer.
Oh, wait, what? You were an Imagineer? Jesus, your life is out of control, Jordan. Get out of here.
But yeah, thanks again.
Oh, man. All right. Well, with that, we'll see you guys out there.
All right. Look forward to talking more soon.
You've been listening to the Ship of the Dead podcast. Email your questions, comments, and buried treasure tips to shipofthedead@limithron.com. You can support the program, join our Discord server, get early access to new episodes, and instantly download hundreds of battle maps, assets, and adventures at limithron.com/Patreon. Tiers start as low as $2 a release, and you only get charged when I make something new. Pirate Borg, my rules-light, rum-infested hack of Morkborg, is available now at pirateborg.com and retail stores everywhere. Ship of the Dead is produced by Limithron LLC, our audio editor is Matt Kepler, and our music is by Alexander Miller. For more, head to limithron.com.